shocked, like how many people, I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and sadly, some of them even in the church, and I'll ask, what's your plan, right? And I'm just being totally honest, like this is what I've heard, okay? There's some people that are literally like, well, I've got guns and tons of ammo. I'm like, well, are you gonna eat your bullets?
Okay, Keller, but if I have guns and you don't have guns, then I have your food.
Correct.
Welcome to another episode of the I'm Telling God About This podcast. I have something super exciting for you guys. You may have caught our past episode on Hurricane Helene. We kind of addressed prepping a little bit, but I have one of my good friends, Keller, with us today. He is all of our friends. And Keller called me last week, and we, no joke, spent 45 minutes talking about my preparedness levels and how they are insufficient. And I succinctly got online and started making purchases of vacuum-sealed rice and beans and looking into satellite communications gear. And so we thought it would be perfect to bring Keller on to really double-click on, this isn't going to be like a bunker bros conversation. This is going to be more of a Christians and prepping and how to be good stewards of leaders in our community, of leaders in our home. If you have children, how to protect the house, your home, your kids, their futures. Keller also goes into many disaster zones and does a lot of relief with Samaritan's Purse and other things like that. So Keller is a jack of all trades, and he got my eyes wide open about prepping. And so Keller, bro, I'm excited for you to wax eloquently about all things prepping. Tell us, what are your, you could stop this episode right now if I just heard these things.
Awesome.
Give me your
top 10.
Top 5 points, top 10 points.
First of all, let me just say respect, because there's a lot of people that would take that conversation and be like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then be like, I'm not going to go spend the money on that, or I'm not going to whatever. And wouldn't take it to heart and be like, you know what? It's a good point. That's actually, that was a blind spot that I didn't catch, and I'm going to do something about it. So I'm so pumped to hear that you were actually like, okay, let's make some changes. So way to go. So to answer your question, the top things, okay, everybody wants guns. I want guns and ammo, right? That's what we need. More guns, more ammo. And you don't need more guns, okay? You need a gun, because if you can't, basically you have your body that you need to try to keep healthy on a regular basis, okay? And then a gun is just your ability for protection and offense at a longer distance away. So you're really just compounding your ability further out. So it's basically putting anything that's dangerous a little further away from your family. Okay. Food and water. Okay. Those are the two things that are not as cool as guns and all the gear and stuff, but it's the thing that everybody misses. You would be shocked how many people, I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and sadly, some of them even in the church, and I'll ask, what's your plan? Right. And I'm just being totally honest. This is what I've heard. Okay. There's some people that are literally well, I've got guns and tons of ammo. I'm like, well, are you going to eat your bullets?
Okay, Keller, but if I have guns and you don't have guns, then I have your food.
Correct. And as a Bible believing Christian that loves Jesus and others.
Okay, touche.
Your plan
should
not.
So you're saying I can't. You're saying it's
right
not
in the morals,
biblical.
right where it hurts.
You're saying
Your
it's
plan
not
should
biblical
not
for me
be
to
to come
assume
and
that I can
steal
rob,
my
steal, and
food.
cheat take
Keller,
your food. Okay, all right, that's good to know.
Keller, I was going to say, something was absent. I did not hear Starlink Mini on your list. We had established that in our
Keller,
previous
not
episode. That was a
let's have a
derail
conversation
this
about the conversation that we had before this episode.
Derail this
two items
conversation.
in. I'm 2 items in. Whoa.
With birthday balloons. Let's go.
I'm not sure how balloons went. I'm only 2 items in. Okay. So when you kind of think about preparedness, there's security, sustainment, and then and information. I would say that's kind of like, I would say like my top. Information, right? Because information means that, like, I don't really need to hear back and forth. If I hear that there's danger in this region or this area or whatever, that's what I needed. I needed the information so I know what to do. So whether it's a Starlink, which is fantastic because you do not, I mean, we thought like, I actually brought this, a little prop. This is a Bofang radio, right? And this is a monster antenna. It's like unfolds and stuff. Like, we were like, yeah, we got comms, we're gonna be good, you know. And we've messed around with them, different things and stuff. But when we were down in Helene, like, network's down, right? You'd go over one hill and you'd have like nothing. And so that makes it really challenging trying to coordinate and like make sure that those people have what they need. And shoot, now they don't have what they need. We didn't have what we need. Something changed on the site. And we're like, crap. Well, now we've got to like communicate back with HQ. So somebody had to like get in a truck and drive up the hill. Well, guess what? As soon as he went like up over a knoll, boom, lost him. No more network communication. And like, and that's like with our radios, right? So like trying to just communicate just so that we could hopscotch over 2 mountains was like basically not happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Line of sight, man, is a problem with UHF.
Yep.
Just saying.
But guess what? Hold on.
IT radio days.
So crap, I thought I brought it with me. It's so small, it fits in my pocket. I don't have it with me, but it's about the size of maybe like 8 credit cards.
Keychain.
Yeah, it's like a keychain item. And that, my brother had a couple of those. And that was sick. They're called Mesh-tastic. I think you guys
we talked about it in the last episode, yeah.
Yeah, so with that, it's not like radios. When you get into radios, you kind of start to understand there's like you can use a repeater, but it gets complicated when you start trying to hopscotch like a couple of repeaters. It's not super practical, I think. It's too much gear. Whereas with this little Mesh-tastic device, you have that on you, everybody has one, and all of a sudden, like, it's all these nodes and everyone's all connected, and you can just like out the gate, like you go up to like a high point and set a node. You can have a node they run off battery for a while.
A repeater?
Well,
I'm sorry, I hear your point, Keller. I would say this, like, you're right about the simplicity. Like, here's what I want to say, because there's going to be people who know, like, and unfortunately for you, you have 2 very competent communications people in the chat. So, like, they're the exact same thing. The difference is it's a question of the average person isn't going to be able to do that, right? So Mesh-tastic is very approachable, but they're the exact same thing. Mesh-tastic is the exact same thing as your Baofeng. The only difference is somebody took some time to write good code that creates an automated network that puts that together. But it can 100% be done with radios. It just requires a substantial amount of knowledge to make that happen.
To be fair, good code on something is the difference between the functionality of this and this.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
So Keller, we get off the phone last week, and we had a 45-minute conversation, and Mesh-tastics didn't come up once. So come back to the things people need to buy that are not Starlinks or Mesh-tastics or.
But seriously,
we'll get to communications. We'll get to communications.
We glossed over it. Sorry. All you and I kind of talked about was basically security and sustainment, I think.
Yeah. Like food and water. You mentioned that already. Food and water.
So food and water.
I didn't know anything about all that.
Okay.
So how are you getting water? What's your thoughts on water?
So water.
You doing iodine tablets? What are you doing?
Yeah,
boiling.
So it depends. Yeah. It depends on where you are, right? If you're in the city, your water's already like, treated with like,
till that stops.
Gender transforming chemicals.
They're making the frogs gay. Cut it in. Sorry. R.I.P. Alex
Jones.
Good.
You're good. But yeah, it's pretty much already treated if you're in the city, and that's kind of scary and whatever. But yeah, so if you're in the city, all right. So let's see, where do we start with all this?
How many water systems are people burning of food every day in a survival situation? How much water do I need to have?
Let me run down. Least,
so how am I cleaning my water?
I got derailed on the Starlink thing, but let's finish with at least like 5. Let's get to like 5 items, right? Because genuinely, like, you have to think about like a scenario, right? So like, let's say a Helene scenario, okay? And a lot more people died out there than what is being said in the news. Like, lots. And I can't really I don't really want to be the guy that like says it. I don't know.
You heard it here first.
I know. Breaking news.
No, but
so a lot of people died. But what were the things that played into that? Yeah,
and they died.
How does that affect
they
this?
died, of course, partly because their house and everything else got washed down the river. But that's not all. That's like a percentage. There's a lot of people that died because they were in a house way out in the mountains somewhere, and every 10 feet on their road going, not only a little bit more than that, there were trees down. So like bushwhacking through the woods miles to get somewhere that has power and can pump water is a massive undertaking. And so, especially if they don't have like just even lugging a chainsaw that far and like schwacking your way or not even like just trying to climb through that, especially for older people. So what happened is the power goes down, right? And so people are like, man, like, and there's houses out there that were fine. People could still live in them, but they have no power. So they don't have any well. Okay. So now they've got to either know where there's clean water. They have to have a water filtration, to be able to filter that water, because a lot of times, like with everything else getting washed out, sewage systems get washed out. Like all this other stuff, you have like fuel and like cars that have been turned over. So like the water is not exactly clean to drink right out of the stream. Let alone that, like, anyways, having the right water filter, like you can get something from like REI or whatever. I mean, just like do a little Google searching and find something that's like a pretty robust, like Camp makes some. And I mean, Josh, you're your guy.
So what's a good water all right. So let's talk about this. So he brings up a good point, right? So like water becomes a problem. So let's say you live on property, right? And you have well, how does that water getting up to your house right now? Keller brings up a good point. Well, we live in 2024, so we have electric water pumps. Yeah, your solar, maybe it is if you've got a battery backup, but let's say it gets damaged, because here's the thing,
and a breaker to kick that off.
Correct. Or maybe your breaker gets damaged. There's a lot of, in complex systems, a lot of things can go wrong. And so even though you might have thought about redundancies, like you don't have spare parts, you don't have bench stock at your house. So like if your house is going to be your fortress, maybe there's a prep for you, like, hey, maybe you need to have a bench stock of certain things. But here's something that you should definitely have. If you have a pump, if you have a well water on your property, you should have a manual access pump to that. That can be hand cranked, or that can be hooked up to some sort of belt setup if you've got something else or whatever. But a minimum, the ability to draw that water up on your own. But then, as Keller brings up in flooding, you also have other issues like contamination. So what are you going to do about filtration? It's not super hard. You can go online and Google how to build out of, a 2-stage filter from food drums that you can put charcoal and sand and some other things, and that'll get you a good way. And then you can add iodine tablets and you can boil it. And then, of course, there's the man-portable stuff, which is the real thing. Like, you got to think about prep in stages, because it's like if you've got a house and the house is good and you've built a fortress, there's stuff that you can do to stay in your home. But if you have to leave your home, then what? And that's where things like a backpacking filtration system comes into play. That's where,
and I think,
go ahead.
For most of this conversation, specifically for the audience, like Keller mentioned this on the last episode, like we are not normal individuals. And for most people, a basic step one would just be get yourself to a place where your home can at least sustain you. And when I was talking with Keller, 3 to 6 months. So he was like, until the next growing season, which I was like, that's a fascinating idea. So like, yes, you are right. Like we, in our last episode, talked about having equipment loaded up in your vehicle so that you can also bug out. But I think for this, like felt inspired, or inspired is not the right word, to do a better job with the minimum amount of space saving that is required to have a stockpile of food. And I would love to hear, Keller, a little bit more if you would unpack that. And then for water, we did discuss, like, I'm on the city. Okay, so I have city water, but then I need to have enough firewood if I need to boil because my electricity has gone out, and I need to have iodine tablets as well, and maybe a Berkey or some other conceptual filtration unit for my home that I fire and forget about.
Yep. The food thing's cool. Talk about the food thing, Keller.
Yeah, just the real quick though on that water filtration thing, like just buy the backpack one.
Yeah.
They're like they're so small
They're
and they're
cheap.
like super robust, and they will filter a ton of water.
Nice.
But like by the time, like, especially in like a grid down sort of situation, which is more likely than I think a lot of people realize, sadly. There's a high, like all the solar, lunar or whatever, what do they call it? The
solar
northern
flares.
lights. Yeah, the solar flare stuff. Like if that is just a little closer, that's enough to like 100 years ago that hit and it smoked and it set like telegraph operators on fire.
Yep.
So that's kind of
I never knew about that, by the way. That was fascinating.
Yeah, that's very true, and it has been happening more frequently. And a lot of people have not even paid attention because you all remember a couple months ago, everyone was out with their iPhones trying to take pictures of the aurora borealis. Well, there's a reason that's happening more frequently. Like it can be a little creepy.
Closer.
But there's one TTP, one practical thing I'll give you on the backpacking. What's it called? Water filtration. If you go that route. No, I'm serious. This is a good one. When you go, make sure, because most of them are either pump oriented, but some are pump and gravity. So MSR, Mountain Safety Research, makes one, and this is what I love about it, is that you're not going to sit there. You might sit there and pump like this, right? But like, what's cool is if you're in one of these situations where you may lose power, the average American's going to lose power maybe could be a couple of days, could be a couple hours, could be maybe a week if something happens like the Duratio from 2013 or like what happened in Texas. But a couple things you should do. When I was growing up, we had this happen a lot in China. So like anytime the power went out, we immediately filled the bathtub because if the water's running, fill the bathtub. Water. Yeah, just fill it, because at least then you've got something, and then I can boil it. I can get it. If the pumps are still working, let them go. Because if you live in city, that's not guaranteed all the time. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. That one right there. Go. The Guardian and the auto, both of these, the Mini Works and the Guardian, can be put in a gravity flow position, and I think any of those are good.
Okay,
like all right, basically any of our MSRs.
Let's try to actually. I really do want to try to answer Nick's original question thoroughly. Yeah. Okay, so let's start first off. When it comes to like a gun, just get like a Glock 19 pistol or like a Sig 365, right? Those two guns are like fantastic. Like everybody has them. They're tons of like simple, easy, done. Just like don't spend tons of money buying like 50 different guns. It's just a waste, honestly. Like, and until you have all this other stuff. Wait, Josh. Pause.
All right, go ahead.
Until you have all this other stuff. All right. So trust me, I have more than just a Glock. All right. But a Glock 9mm. Okay. It's a simple, round. It's tons of it. It's pretty cheap. And then I would say after that, either like a shotgun or probably an AR-15. Okay. At least if you're in America. So an AR-15, again, lots of that ammo. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 365. The 365 XL is the one that I like.
Yep.
Yeah. So I carry that as well. So great trigger, great. It's just good. So anyway, so that's the gun stuff. And then, like I said, with the AR-15, you can't just get a rifle. A lot of people that go out and they're like, oh, I got the budget for 2. I'm going to get 2 rifles. It's like, no, dude, get a rifle, and you need to have like a red dot optic on top of it, or some kind of an optic for aiming. Okay, simple. You can either have a red dot or a scope. You need to have a light on that gun, and you should have a sling on that gun. So like there's like these key things that if you're gonna like use it like it's a tool, okay, instead of it being just like this cute artsy thing, you bring them all out and set them on the table, and everybody goes and shoots, and then you come to the range empty and leave empty. You need to learn how to actually carry that gun so that you're not pointing it at people, and so that you're using it safely, and so that it's more durable and robust. All right. So that's rifle, pistol, and then we go to food. All right. A lot of people get food wrong. Okay. They think, oh, I'm just going to go on, My Patriot Supply or whatever, and I'm just going to order the bucket that says 2 months, or I'm going to order the bucket that says, oh, it's a year for $2,000. Heck yeah, I'm done. But if you actually break that down and figure out what's in that, it is pancakes and Kool-Aid. That is what you're getting. Like 80% of it's a huge percentage. I mean, I went down through and it's very hard to get the data. You actually have to look at each individual nutritional ingredient and then spreadsheet it out and figure it out. It was quite a pain. But then there's so that's what you got to avoid. You want to avoid the kind of scammy, pancake stuff. Instead, look for things that actually have high protein content and then other vegetables and minerals and things like that. Okay. So there's sort of 3 ways to do this. You can either go the really super cheap way, which is just beans and rice. Okay.
That's my way. I'm all there.
That's what I got.
Dude, listen, I've tried to
That's my way.
encourage
Beans,
so
rice,
many
a little
people.
bit of mustard, salt, pepper. It's all you need.
That's right. But here's the one thing that people miss, okay, is you got to test everything. You got to test your gear. Set up your rifle the way you're actually going to carry it, and then go run some laps in somebody's field, and then use your rifle. Lay down, shoot, test this stuff. Because what you're going to find is, oh, shoot, these screws back out in it, and it actually, I lose 0, and now I'm aiming here, but I'm hitting way over here. Or when I shoot 25 yards away, it's dead on. When I shoot 300 yards or 100 yards away, it's up high or it's low. Or you need to test this stuff. The food, test it. So try it for a couple days or a week or something like that. And just be all right, what would this be like? This would suck, but let's see what this would be like. I'm going to live for about 3 or 4 days on just beans and rice. I'm going to see what my mood is like, what my wife's mood is like, whether or not my kids are even remotely manageable.
I don't know if I could do a test run with the whole family. 3 kids that are.
I like this challenge though. That's wild.
We should
survival weekend on the I'm Telling God About This
survival
podcast.
challenge weekend. So
Guess
can
what?
your family survive?
We should record it too.
You make a great point. Okay. Here's what else your wife would get annoyed at is you need enough fuel to boil a pot constantly. Okay. So if you're going to have rice and beans, that's fine. But you also have to have a lot of propane or
a lot of firewood.
A lot of firewood. And you need an electric chainsaw with plenty of bar oil, because if you don't, it's going to burn up that chain and then it's not going to work. And so there's the Starlink thing has a purpose, but if you don't have the subscription beforehand, it's worthless. So if you have the beans and rice, but you can't boil the water, well, I guess you could maybe gnaw down hard beans,
system.
But man,
But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this is the kind of the idea, and this is the issue. You talk about scenarios, right? There's a difference between starting over civilization and surviving 10 days.
True.
I was stuck in Maryland for 15 days without power in the suburbs, and people went feral. All the food went bad. I'm serious.
Was that the snowpocalypse?
No, this was the derecho, Josh. Do you remember the big thunderstorm that ripped through and knocked out power on the East Coast? And I want to say it was 2011 or 2012.
Didn't you all just die on a motorcycle?
Yeah, I did. I was on a motorcycle in the middle of that, and I hit a tree in the middle of the night. That was a whole other story. But I was coming back. But this is what happens.
Josh, where did you get food?
Happens. So we pulled out everything. So the first thing I did when I got home was we pulled out all the food and we cooked it. That was the first thing we did. Everything refrigerated that could be cooked, we cooked. The other thing we did was luckily we had a generator, so we were able to keep some stuff, but we were able to go to where there was power. That's the one nice thing is not everywhere was fully affected, so we were able to get things like ice and other stuff like that, and it wasn't a whole. Some people had it worse than others, but my point is we knew. I knew how to deal with that problem because that was something we had grown up with where we lose power. Yeah.
What about let's think through that exact scenario, but just imagine there wasn't somebody within an hour that
for sure. So that's what I'm getting at. So what I'm saying is you could be surviving with that situation. And so that's exactly that's a great point. So why have gas in your house?
In Helene, in Helene, I think a lot of people died. I was talking to a lot of people died just from being out there for 12 days. They were 12 days so far.
12 days. 12 days will kill you.
When I was getting numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, dude, try
water
to
and food.
Water.
Yeah. But this is another thing. You hit those things with the main things. But if you live somewhere, everyone's different, right? I move every couple of years. I live in government housing on a military base. I'm not worried about food. There's a bajillion calories of MREs a stone's throw from my house. I don't have to worry about that. I have the entire weight of the federal government to deal with that problem set, which is nice because I move every 2 years, so I can't build the stockpiles that I would build if I lived somewhere. But you need to think about that, right?
I want to discuss that.
You have to think about that. Yeah.
let's talk about that real quick, because even in all my experience with prepping, I really didn't understand like what that even looked like. And again, like prepping has this taboo kind of like weird boomer vibe to it. It's not that. I mean, I'm a dad. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
or hey, better yet, Josh, remember like in the last episode I was like, thanks for hooking me up. Do you know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
Okay.
Wait, hold on, wait. Which one?
So when I was going down to the Florida one of the first ones I went to.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, like I need a gun that can like pack up.
Yeah.
And we won't say whose gun it was, but he like turns over and he's like, I can vouch for this guy. He needs this gun. And then the dude was like, here. And it was David Stratton.
That was it. It's true. Hooked it up.
Huh.
It's true.
So anyway, all good things. So that said, I didn't need that gun, but I will say this. I went down and drove by many grocery stores that had had the windows broken out and everything was gone. And I went by people who had spray painted on their own house, looters will be shot.
Yep. That's a real thing.
So it gets weird real quick, and I've seen it like more than one occasion now. And I mean, just look at what happened in New Orleans when it was like too far. Like when you get trapped in a spot, and that's what happens. Like you were fine because you weren't trapped. It was power out. Yeah, that's inconvenient, but you weren't trapped. You were able to jump in a car. There was no gridlock. Everything was good, basically. I mean, you just cruised a little ways away and got power.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible, but we've been in. But this is, to your point, this is why I would say, like, you got to look at what you have. You have to look at what's available. But the food thing is a real thing. Like, I think more people should grow more things on their property, and I also think like this is part of the reason also why, like, if you ask the average person if they've ever grown anything that they can eat, like substantive.
Right. Yeah.
Most people have not.
To survive off of, you need about an acre per person per year.
Yeah.
It's I totally, no. I understand. I'm not suggesting that's fully sustainable.
I'm a fan.
Right?
Like I'm a fan of like the homesteady type stuff, like having chickens and I mean, chickens alone is pretty cool. But so here's where my
and hunting
went. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So much to cover. So chickens, for example, like, all right. So the farming thing, when I was like, how am I going to solve my food problem? Right. Because I need to have food for my family indefinitely. So I was like, you know what I'll do? I'll start buying food from the local farmers market. I'll become friends with them. And then I'll figure out who's down. And then I'll be like, hey, listen, like if Crap is a fan, we'll come out, live at your place, and we'll protect, because you cannot secure your house.
Right. You can only have what you can hold.
Right.
That's
but
rule number one.
You can only, even if you have like a cabin someplace that's like not too far away and you think you're going to stay up 24/7 for a month, that's not happening. Okay. So you need like not just like 3 or 4 people, you need like 10 to 15 people to secure any like sizable property, like any property that you're actually like a farm with like cows or a decent amount of vegetables and stuff like that, varying vegetables. Like you need like quite a few people, and then you need the food there to like support those people. So let's talk about like real quick why you would need that, right? Like what scenario are we really thinking about the end of society? But like if we get hit with like a solar flare, like let's just make it simpler, okay? If there's a document that got like leaked, and actually it was also research done by some of the power companies that all it would take is 9 strategic substations to get shot up with 2 magazines, like an AK or an AR.
That would take out the power grid.
And it would, and what happens is that power has to keep going somewhere. So it would overload, and then it would hit the next one and overload it, and boom, 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 and it cascades. And so they said it would only take, there's 55,000 substations across the United States, and they're like not secured like at all. It's just a chain link fence between you and the transformers. So you can shoot them up, and it takes like a year or more. Just like the lead time on these substations, it's massive.
There's only 2 companies that make them.
No, and it relies on like China and Taiwan and all these places to like play nice and continue to make them. They say that if we had an event like that, that it would take 9 to 12. It would take it would take like 18 months if everything was running at like full speed just to be able to make everything to get it here. But if we have something like that happen where we have a massive power outage, they say that 90% of the population will be dead in the first 12 months.
Yeah.
And the majority of that, it's a massive bell curve. The majority of that would happen in the first like couple months to weeks. So not to get all like
what kind of so what I'm just thinking with that, like we're talking about varying levels of survival, right? So there is like you have your immediate, power outage for 12 days, but there's other places that you can go to get power. And then there's also the Helene situation where you may think, oh, I'm in a rural area, but then a flood comes through and wipes out everything. And now you can't get, and so you got a varying degrees. But my question is, like, when you were in Helene, or if you've heard stories of people in Helene, my thought is that the places that got hit pretty hard, there had to have been at least one or two people that did some decent prep. Did they survive? Or was it basically, what was their plan? What were the survivors' stories? How did they get out when it just hit the fan?
This is the way it is at every disaster. There's always like the best people come out of the woodwork. Okay. And so that gives me a ton of hope, because like we'll be showing up at Samaritan's Purse, and it's like sometimes a lot of the work is like already getting done just by like neighbors. Guys will come ripping down on their side by side with chainsaws and like bottles of water and stuff like that, and they come, and it's just like neighbors helping neighbors, and that is like so American. So like honestly, like every time I kind of get like a little bit down and like I get to go in the storm, it's like I get to be around some of the best people.
Dude, you ever seen the show? Do you guys remember the show Jericho? They came out. Okay, highly recommend. They're still petitioning to try to bring it back. I mean, it's been decades now, but like this was height of GWAT and the global war on terror. And back when contractors and Blackwater was a big thing, and the whole premise is basically this guy, he comes back to his hometown and he's just visiting, he's just stopping through, but while he's there, America gets nuked. And basically his dad is the mayor of this town, and basically what happens is when this takes place, the town just basically closes their borders. Dude, this show,
I did see this. It was so good.
Gives such a great roadmap of initial, at least. Hold on. I'm not saying that it's perfect, right? But here's some key things that this show nails, which is a lot of what you were talking about, which is it takes a community to survive long term. Small towns in America, whether or not they've forgotten how to do it, those small towns grew out of those exact communities. In other words, the bones of the thing that built it are still there. People may have forgotten why those things are there, but they still exist. So if you live in a small town in America, the good news is your infrastructure's there.
Yeah.
The trick is coordinating and getting everybody on the same page. And what that show, if you watch that show, what you'll see is exactly that good leadership. And this gets back to biblical manhood and why church is important and why knowing who your neighbors is important, is because what happened in that community was the mayor of that town took control, took leadership, organized the people, pulled all the resources, did all the things because people knew each other. There was trust. All of these things.
And he strived to act justly. He wasn't just like in it for, himself and everything. Yeah.
Fantastic example and a wonderful play of like how things can go sideways and there's bad elements. And it's a great fictional dramatized depiction, but it does cover a lot of these things.
If you can, I love this get over like the horrible like acting of like
yes,
and, like, the,
it was bad
triangle freaking love stories and stuff like that. If you get past all of that, the rest of it was pretty solid. Hey, one more thing. There's a movie coming out that's going to be awesome, I think. It's called Homestead. It's going to be December 20th. Go see it. I invested in it like a couple of years ago. Dude, it's going to be awesome. I'm so pumped.
What were you saying, Nick?
All I was saying is the reason I like this conversation is because I'm a man who likes to be prepared. And when I was done talking with Keller, I have generally not engaged in the prepping conversation, not with you, Keller, with other people, because it's this nerd fest of guns, gear, bunkers, and like what I really enjoyed was if you think about it like basic insurance, it's like it becomes so much more attainable where whoever's listening and whatever situation you're in, you evaluate your circumstances. So for me, in our current situation with our current household, I have to have enough calories to feed a family of 5 for 3 to 6 months. I need to have a solid solution for water. I need to have a solid solution for protection.
You need about half.
And then we can talk about all the other fun things.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And you need about half your body weight in protein, or up to a full your body weight in protein.
Which I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons.
That's the easy one to tell whether or not your food source is like decent or not. So if you're like going and buying Patriot Supply, you say, okay, well, tell me what if the total calories is 2,000 calories per year, how much protein?
What percentage is protein?
Exact. Well, like the ounces. If you can figure out grams of protein, if you've got 100 per day or whatever your half your body weight is, if you can, and then, you calculate that for the whole family. Okay. Gotta be careful about
Say that again and say it more slowly, Keller. Half of my body weight per day in protein.
Minimum. And
that is
for what duration?
So I weigh 140 pounds.
Whatever you want to have.
I weigh 140 pounds. You're obviously not telling me I need to consume 65 pounds a day of protein. You're talking about half my body weight.
65 pounds of protein a day?
I go closer to like grams.
That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm slowing you down. So we're not talking about half my body weight in pounds. No, you just said half your body weight.
Half your body weight.
That's a lot of weight
in grams.
For
half
6
your body
months.
weight in
I'm like,
grams.
oh my goodness.
Lord have mercy.
I thought for sure I said grams, but yeah.
No, you did, but you didn't connect those two together. Yes.
Yeah. So
okay.
You need 2,000. I mean, I would say 2,000 to 2,500 in calories, because here's the thing: you're not driving everywhere anymore, and you're doing a lot more stuff
working.
But,
yes.
Yeah. And so you're just going to burn a lot more calories than what you're used to. Also, your body's going to be pretty stressed out. You're going to be staying up later.
Yes.
There's just a lot of things that change. And so, sorry guys, I have to turn this volume down. Somehow my AirPods turned up.
Oh, you're good.
So you need to process that. Circling back to, remember when we were talking about beans and rice and how like, I don't think my wife is going to be able to, even manage like a test run of that. You got to think about that too. And it's like, hey, how much money are you spending per year on your taxes and insurance just for your truck, that if it wrecked tomorrow, you'd be bummed about it for like a week maybe, and then you would get on with it and you'd buy a new vehicle and you'd figure it out, right? But like, if tomorrow there was a solar flare or somebody got pissed off and cascaded a bunch of power and we lose power indefinitely and everyone has no food, like, how much money are you going to put towards your family that God has put?
You're absolutely
in a different
right,
situation.
Keller.
Sorry, you're in a different situation.
No, not just me.
Military base.
I'm talking about a lot of people, but here's the other thing to think about. Here's what I want to make a distinction, because you make that as if like, hey, this is obvious, but this is kind of the point. Like, almost every person listening to this podcast has probably been in a car accident, right? How many people listening to this podcast have been without food or water for more than 3 days, right? Like, I've been there, so I know why that's important. Like, I know, because once you've experienced those things, I've had somebody hold a gun at my head and tell me they're going to kill me. I've had that happen, so I know why that's important. But the average person has not experienced that. So to them, this is mythical unicorn stuff. In fact, not only have they not experienced it, but most of their friends haven't either. So like when you tell people like, hey, I want you to consider spending $500 to $600 a month on, food supplies for a potential.
That's not how much it is. That's what I was loving about this conversation.
I
agree with that.
That's if you want top shelf, like peak
refuel. But that's what Keller was saying. Keller's saying if you don't want to survive on beans and rice, you should look at what you're spending in other parts of your life. That's why I was saying, Keller, that's where I was talking about gardening. Because what I'm getting at is this. You're absolutely right. You're not going to sustain your family on a freedom garden, but you're going to create the spice of life with spices. Hey, you know what we have that the founders didn't have, and the people who were here earlier? Like, we have I can get seeds and spices and things from all over the world that people killed for, and I can grow them in my backyard or in a greenhouse.
That's true.
Right? And that's gold. If people killed for it 300 years ago, and traveled and financed expeditions across the world, like, it's probably worth me growing a little bit, or at least having some seed stock, right, to do those types of things, or even know how to do it. And that's what I'm getting at, is like,
let's touch
point
on
is clear.
Let's touch on something with that. Okay. I told this to Nick, and I think that circles back to like the community. Okay. Because I think with every like person that kind of starts to go down this road, they're like, okay, how do I get more prepared? All right, what gear do I buy? What food do I get? And then eventually you realize they're like, I can't buy enough gear and I can't buy enough food.
Correct.
And you just can't. you do need to buy a certain amount. I think you should try to aim for at least a certain amount to kind of get you past like that first difficult stretch. But what you need more is you need, the skills
community.
that we talked about in the last
skills.
podcast, and you need community. And so there's this concept called, I really like it. I just learned about it actually not so long ago. It's called the 2 and 10. So it's, you want to try to find somebody that lives within 2 minutes of you that is also, serious about this stuff, and that trains, and that knows how to shoot, and then knows how to do like skills and, all the stuff that's like practical, daily, like that you might need if you were kind of rebuilding, right? And it helps to know what you need to rebuild if you go to disaster zones and like hang out there,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so like, you find 2 guys, but also, the real concept around the 2 and 10 is that these are 2 guys that really do take like security stuff more seriously, right? And because what happens is like in Panama City, Florida, when I was down there, you had like 50 cops or 100 cops from another town a couple hours away that come driving in, and there's like a changing of the guards, and you're there. It's pretty sick. It happens like every so often, right? Because they kind of come in, they'll stay for a few days, and then they roll back out, or they'll stay for whatever shift. And the only way that the place is like stay and chill is because they got cops on like every corner. Okay?
Yep.
And those cops are coming
100%.
from somewhere else where their family is good, and they're coming to secure someplace that's not secure. So if let's say if there was a widespread power outage, there are not cops coming.
No one's coming.
Exactly.
No one's coming. No, you're good.
It's good.
You're good.
So your point
his
is
recording
that
stopped.
Yeah, there's not enough people to come save you.
Hold on, pause.
There's nobody.
Josh, hold on, pause. Josh is checking something.
Keller says you have your recording is stopped due to an incoming call.
Okay, sorry. Let me.
Cancel the call.
I canceled it.
Or unless you need to take it.
No, it's good. I canceled it. I wonder, can I put it on airplane mode? No. What do I do? Do not disturb.
No.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Sorry. No. I realized that focus.
That's better.
There we go. Do not disturb. All right. Okay, so there's no one coming to save you in this scenario,
let me
right?
see.
Look, we all hope that this never happens, okay? But
hold on, let me just double check that you're coming back. You're coming in.
I'm still at like 26%, which is kind of.
Well, no, I'm just trying to make sure it's not.
This got recorded.
Okay, it says you're recording. No, it's
just not. Okay, we just had a fun night hanging out. This is practice.
Totally.
So this is good.
Okay, let me think about trying to clean this up.
All right, you're good. Cool.
We're good.
Okay, so if we have to, like, of course, like, we hope that none of this happens, right? And there's a good chance that it never does, and that's ideal. But we don't want to prepare for like ideal. We're preparing so that way we can kind of handle anything, and as much as we can. So 2 and 10, 2 guys within 2 minutes, 10 guys within.
Nick said
within
a good
10
point.
Minutes, okay, and another thing that I think we need to talk about is we have a very independent mindset here in America. And I think that what we need to start breaking away from that is thinking more communally and thinking, hey, in an ideal world, I would go out and buy my perfect getaway spot, and my house would be the perfect distance where it's close enough to town and far enough away, and it's got like fertile land for growing, but it's up high and it's a mountain, it's a fortress, it's got like everything is perfect. And that's so hard to find and so expensive and such like a massive undertaking to get to that point where you have that like kind of perfect homestead. I think we need to be more open to being like, hey, I'm going to need 10 to 15 people to protect the homestead, even if I could get it. So then what I need to try to do is find someone who already has that property or something like that. In the meantime, maybe that's your long-term goal. That's great. But in the meantime, build out your community. Find the other guys like in your circle that are like ready to put their money where their mouth is and say like, yeah, I'm going to spend, because dude, it's not that expensive to buy beans and rice, and you got to buy the propane, but like to buy beans and rice is like $150 a month for a person.
Yeah, the Mormons do it as part of their church. It's required.
Mandatory. Yeah.
They all do it. It's mandatory. But this is the point. The Mormons understand this, and this is kind of to get to your point, Keller, and this is kind of bring it back to kind of why we're even talking about this on our podcast is where are you going to find those people? Where are you going to organize that community? What are you going to organize that community around? Why should anybody care? Because here's something that you'll find. People, like, they have that old saying, like, like 12 hours to animal or whatever, right? Like, the idea is that, like, People will go to their base instincts very, very, very quickly. And so if they don't have, so the people who, like, if you think, oh, Jim is cool, that Jim and I are buddies from work, we like to go to the range together, like Jim's into prepping, he's a solid dude. Well, listen to me, if Jim doesn't know Jesus, then Jim's looking out for Jim. I don't care how cool you are. I don't care how cool you are, because that's what it comes down to, is like, eternity is the anchor. Like, if you don't have the core beliefs aligned between you, if your community isn't built on those foundational values, then it's not going to happen. And so kind of what I would suggest in this, and this is kind of where I've fallen in this mentality, is like the very best, the bare minimum best prep that you can have is skills. Do you know how to do things? Because the internet's not going to be here, right? So like, do you know how to do things? Can you make clothes? Can you cook food? Can you grow things? Can you hunt? Can you process an animal? Do you know how to do those basic things? Those are things that you can do, that you learn, and then they're there. And then the other thing is like, you want to talk about being part of a community. How do you get that 2 in 10 that Keller was just talking about? How do you get that? Well, I'll tell you where you're going to find it. At church. It's where you should find it. We should find it at church. And so,
I think if you're listening here, and so like and comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know from my vantage point, the main goal was an insurance protocol, right? Like Keller mentioned $150 a month. That's what he means is you're only aiming to save up for 3 to 6 months worth of food. So like in my situation, and for most people listening, right, like let's just start with the basics, and then we'll do a more advanced prepping episode in the future. Comment if you want to hear more advanced prepping where we incorporate mobile Starlink situations and mesh towers on tops of mountain peaks. But in the meantime, a 9mm, a shotgun, water, food for 3 to 6 months, and a basic security protocol, and above all else, community. Do not do it alone, which reinforces the concept of the I'm Telling God About This podcast. That is that we are here to bring about the kingdom of God. And in so doing, we want to bring about the kingdom of God together as the body of believers. So Keller, it's been an honor to have you with us. This has been another episode of the I'm Telling God About This podcast. We'll see you guys again soon.
Civilization, what do you have? 20 years of dumpster fires, purple hair, people who don't know which bathroom to go into. Get off my lawn.